What if Native Americans hadn't lost the war for the continent, but instead created their own recognized pirate state right under the nose of the USA? Imagine a political map of North America where the Florida Peninsula isn't colored in the stars and stripes. There is no familiar retirement state or Disney World here. Instead, from Apalachicola Bay to the impenetrable Everglades, a sovereign indigenous federation stretches out, holding the entire Caribbean basin in an iron grip. The starting point of our alternate reality is August 1799. The British adventurer William Augustus Bowles lands on the coast of Spanish Florida. He unites the Creek and Seminole tribes, boldly proclaiming the independent state of Muskogee. In our history, the Spaniards lured Bowles into a trap, and he rotted in Havana's El Morro prison. But in this reality, the geopolitical roulette lands on a different sector. In 1801, alarming dispatches reach London. Thomas Jefferson's administration is dreaming of southward expansion. The British cabinet makes a cynical and brilliant decision. Why waste the Crown's resources defending deadly swamps when you can arm those who know them like the back of their hand? In 1802, a secret frigate in the mouth of the Apalachicola River delivers 10,000 Brown Bess muskets, heavy artillery, and an official charter of British protectorate. The State of Muskogee becomes a legitimate political entity. Bowles receives the title of Governor General, and the United Tribes get the umbrella of the Royal Navy. Spain takes the first hit. Indigenous detachments, supported by British gunboats, easily drive the decrepit Spanish garrison out of Fort San Marcos. By 1810, the territory from Pensacola to St. Augustine turns into an impregnable, militarized zone. Muskogee establishes its own admiralty from former Caribbean privateers. The golden age of legalized piracy begins. The Florida Straits become a toll road. Any American vessel from New Orleans is obliged to pay a transit duty to the indigenous patrols. Washington flies into a rage. In the spring of 1814, General Andrew Jackson invades Florida with the intention of eradicating Muskogee and annexing the peninsula. But here he is met not by a scattered militia with bows, but by regular indigenous infantry trained by Scottish sergeants and the salvos of heavy naval guns. At the Battle of the Suwannee, Jackson's troops fall into a carefully planned cauldron. The general himself miraculously escapes capture, abandoning his wagons and artillery in the fetid quagmires. This crushing defeat puts an end to Jackson's political career. He will never become the 7th U.S. president, and Washington is forced to recognize Muskogee's borders along the 31st parallel. By the mid-19th century, the young state is rapidly evolving. The capital is moved to the city of Miccosukee, rebuilt according to strict European urban plans. The government is a unique hybrid. A bicameral parliament consists of the House of Chiefs, based on clan affiliation, and the House of Representatives, elected by all residents. When the Civil War breaks out in the USA in 1861, the Confederates send a diplomatic mission to Miccosukee, demanding a military alliance against the North. But the Supreme Council of Elders gives an icy refusal. For the indigenous people, who have sheltered tens of thousands of runaway Africans, the planters of the South are natural enemies. Muskogee chooses a highly profitable, armed neutrality. Floridian ports become the main transit hub for smuggling cotton to Liverpool, bypassing the U.S. Navy blockade. Gold flows like a river into the treasury of the Indigenous Federation. With these funds, Chief Osceola II an Oxford graduate, hires the best engineers to lay the first railroads. The late 19th century marks the Industrial Revolution on the peninsula. Shipyards and plants for processing phosphates mined on coral reefs spring up. Muskogee masterfully maneuvers between the interests of the USA and Britain. The Treaty of 1898 secures the Floridians' exclusive rights to ensure the security of shipping in the Gulf. Look at this economic model. Former pirate syndicates legalized themselves, turning into respectable transnational trading corporations with boards of directors. The Seminole Trading Syndicate tightly controls up to a third of all Cuban sugar and Jamaican rum exports. Shares of Muskogee companies are traded on the London Stock Exchange. The Prohibition era in the U.S. becomes a real Klondike for Muskogee. Miami here is not an American health resort, but the glittering smuggling capital of the world. In the 1920s, the Florida coast glows with the neon of elite casinos. American intelligence agencies are powerless. The border is heavily guarded by indigenous border guards with Thompson submachine guns. During World War II, Muskogee leases naval bases in Tampa and Key West to the Allies, receiving state-of-the-art destroyers under the Lend-Lease program in return. The Cold War brings new challenges. Fidel Castro seizes power in Cuba. The Florida Straits instantly become the most explosive point on the planet. The Pentagon is in a panic. Between Soviet Cuba and U.S. territory lies a sovereign indigenous state that categorically refuses to host American missiles. Supreme Chief Tomatli performs a diplomatic miracle in 1962. He locks KGB and CIA residents in Miccosukee, forcing them to sign a pact to demilitarize the basin. For its buffer zone status, Muskogee receives gigantic preferences. Soviet cargo ships pay in gold for safe passage, and the Americans generously finance the infrastructure. In the 1980s, the economy makes another historical pivot. The traditional indigenous respect for the land transforms into a strict state eco-policy. Most of the Everglades is declared a sacred biosphere reserve, completely closed to heavy industry. No dams for the sake of cheap housing for expats. Where do the indigenous people get their money, you ask? The answer is simple. They become absolute monopolists in high-tech communications and offshore banking. The Muskogee Bank Secrecy Act is passed, making Swiss banks look like an open house. The shadow capitals of both Americas flock to the vaults of Tallahassee. Imagine the modern state of Muskogee. It is a technologically advanced oasis with a population of 8 million people speaking a mix of English and the Creek language. A magnetic levitation line stretches along the east coast. High-speed trains silently glide over untouched mangrove forests from St. Augustine to Miami, Immokalee. The skyscrapers of the financial districts resemble giant chickees, traditional Seminole dwellings made of palm leaves, but built of tinted glass and green steel. The Council of Elders is now indistinguishable from the board of directors of a megacorporation. The chiefs wear strict Savile Row suits, but don silk turbans for diplomatic receptions. The Florida Straits are patrolled by silent electric strike boats. They still exact an astronomical environmental fee from every tanker heading to Texas. The Okmulgee Technology Cluster on the outskirts of Orlando successfully destroys Silicon Valley's monopoly in applied artificial intelligence and bioengineering. The United States gritted its teeth and put up with its independent neighbor. The border along the Georgia line consists of concrete checkpoints where passports bearing the coat of arms of an alligator and crossed muskets are scanned. There is no NASA base at Cape Canaveral. Instead, the Muskogee International Equatorial Spaceport operates there, cynically leasing launch pads to Elon Musk. Florida's cultural hegemony is undeniable. Hollywood producers spend years knocking on doors in Miccosukee, begging for quotas to film on location in the sovereign jungles. Indigenous cinema dictates the global fashion for eco-cyberpunk, while traditional cuisine featuring alligator and swamp spices is served in Michelin-starred restaurants in Paris. Wealthy Americans from the northern states dream of getting a residence permit in Muskogee, but the elders' migration laws are ruthless. Passports are given only to engineering geniuses. This alternate branch of reality proves how one secret arms shipment by the British Crown in 1802 could forever redraw the geopolitics of the continent. William Bowles, whose name is forgotten in our reality, rests here in a granite mausoleum in the port of Apalachicola, revered on par with the founding fathers of great empires. Andrew Jackson remained in dusty archives as a mediocre general who ruined his soldiers in the quagmire, while the indigenous people of the Southeast forever escaped the horrors of the Trail of Tears. Instead of humiliating reservations and alcoholic oblivion, a sovereign superpower dictating the rules of the game at the key maritime hub of the Western Hemisphere. From rickety pirate schooners to the secure servers of offshore banks, the state of Muskogee demonstrates that historical fatalism is the lot of losers. Look once again at this map. The Caribbean Sea, tightly locked by an indigenous key. Welcome to a world where the original masters of the continent did not give up a single inch of their land.